If you were to place colonialism back during this time period into an economic context, that context would be what's known as mercantilism. Mercantilism is basically the belief that there's limited amount of wealth in the world and that your power as a nation is derived from that wealth. So basically think of it as the wealth as a fixed unit in terms of, like, let's say, a pizza. There's only so much you can have, so much pizza you can have with just one pizza. And so you have your slice and your neighbor has their slice, and that's about it. Well, how are you going to get more? How are you going to get more pizza? Well, you can certainly go to war with that person, or you can stack the deck in your favor. And that's pretty much what the English and everybody else is going to do. English mercantilism is aimed at the Dutch. The Dutch are the biggest economic rivals of the English during this era of colonialism. The French are more of a diplomatic, geopolitical rival, whereas the Dutch, they're economics. And so there are four ways in order to produce a market that is in favor of you. We're going to go through all four of them. Number one is navigation acts. Now, I'm not talking about how to ship, navigation, how to steer a ship. That's not what I'm talking about. Navigation acts meaning that if you wanted to trade within the English Empire, it had to be done on board an English ship or an English colonial ship. Now, this is going to change after the restoration of the English monarchy, but nonetheless, if you wanted to trade within the English Empire, you had to be basically on a British flag ship. In addition, the crew had to be English. Half of the crew had to be English. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to cut and eliminate Dutch competition from English colonial trading routes. No longer can a Dutch ship come in and bring Dutch stuff into the English colonies or into the English Empire to be sold in competition with the English products. Another way to stack the deck in your favor is called the enumerated goods. These are basically goods that can they're produced and they are enumerated in law. They are listed in the law that can only be legally shipped from the colony to a specific location. So, for example, with English mercantilism, an enumerated good like sugar, tobacco, indigo, and cotton, they would first have to be produced legally in the colonies, and then the only way you could bring them to the outside market is by shipping them to England itself. And then they can be sold into the world market. Another way to stack the deck in your favor is what's known as subsidized goods. This is when the government comes in and helps you out, and it gives you an incentive, a subsidy, to produce something. So, for example, let's put in a hypothetical situation that it costs Apple $200 to produce an iPhone. Well, that means that in order for Apple to gain a profit, it must sell that iPhone for at least $201. Now, of course, they're not going to. They're going to mark it up a lot higher than that, but I think you get my point. Well, let's pretend that the federal government subsidizes, iPhones. Well, what's going to, and they do it to the tune of $100. Every iPhone you make, we're going to give you $100. Well, that's going to basically bring down your bottom line, is it not? Now Apple's only spending $100 in order to produce an iPhone, which means that the profit margin actually gets increased. You can, now you can sell an iPhone for just $101 and you'd be making a profit. But again, you're not going to see a $1 profit per phone. But you get my point. This is therefore kind of like a tariff in reverse. It makes your products cheaper versus a foreign goods. But instead of raising the prices of the foreign goods, you're lowering the prices of your goods. So this is what a subsidized good would be. Finally, prohibited goods. What are they? Well, those, it's another way to limit competition. Basically, colonists would be prohibited from making things. They were making finished goods. Remember, sugar, tobacco, cotton, and indigo. These are all what we call raw materials. They are not, in them of themselves, they are usually going to be processed into some other finished good. For sugar, we can have rum. For cotton, we can have textiles. And indigo, we can use that to dye clothing and whatnot. So those are finished goods, and finished goods can only be produced in certain areas, particularly the motherland. And in fact, the colonists at this time would be prohibited from making certain goods, such as iron, wool, and even hats. We have a Hat Act that prohibits the colonists from making hats. This limits your competition. This makes your colonies dependent on you for finished goods. Of course, you're dependent on your colony for the raw materials, but you're getting a better bargain because now you're taking raw materials, applying labor in other raw materials, and you're increasing the wealth and increasing the worth of that product. Why, for example, is an ear of corn cheaper than, say, a bottle of Jack Daniels? It's because Jack Daniels requires a lot more labor and a lot more raw materials in order to produce your ear of corn. So these are ways that if you ever see these types of features for economic features, this is how you're going to know when you have mercantilism.